My name is Alan Morrick, former senior ranger, Redwood National Park. 14 years in that forest, 14 years walking through fog that doesn't lift, and paths that curve even when the maps say they don't. Redwood isn't what people think it is. They see brochures, towering trees, sunlight streaking through the canopy like a cathedral, families taking pictures, kids with juice boxes and granola bars. That's what the park wants you to see. That's the version you pay for. But the forest has other sides. And once you've been there long enough, those sides stop hiding. I didn't believe any of it when I first took the post. Thought the stories were just local color, campfire stuff. The native warnings, the ranger disappearances, the strange sounds in the groves the visitors never enter. Every forest has its legends. But most legends don't leave behind boots filled with feet. That case, the one that ended my career, that wasn't the first strange thing I saw out there, but it was the one that broke something in me. That night, June 12th, 2007, we got the report just after 6 p.m. Hiker named Kevin Morse, 36, solo backpacker. Logged his route at the Crescent City Station, 3-day loop through the tall trees grove and back around through Redwood Creek. Should have returned Sunday night. Didn't. Girlfriend called it in. Standard protocol. We didn't worry too much. People get delayed, forget to check back in, but we still went out. I led the team, me, Deputy Rios, and Talbot, a rookie just 3 months in. He still had that kind of optimistic quiet in him. Still thought the job was about saving people. We hiked up into the grove at dawn. The mist was thick. You couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead. Every sound was muffled. Your own breath felt like it belonged to someone else. And then we found the campsite. That's when it stopped feeling like a search. That's when it started feeling like something else entirely. The tent was collapsed, but not from wind or rain. It was torn straight down the center, long rips, fabric flapping slightly like something had clawed its way out. But there were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no prints, no drag marks. Everything was still in place, pack, sleeping bag, even his meal packet. But his boots were sitting side by side just outside the tent flap, perfectly placed, and inside them, his feet, clean, still inside the socks, no tearing, no gore, just there, as if something had taken the rest of him away in a single motion and left the feet behind. Talbot vomited on the spot. Rio stepped back, hand on his radio, but said nothing. I just remember how quiet it was. The birds had stopped. The wind wasn't moving. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath. We flagged the scene, took photos, called it in. We waited for SAR. They found nothing. No scent trail, no broken branches, no heat signature. Kevin Morse was gone, completely. And then the second disappearance happened. Talbot went missing 2 nights later. He was off duty, said he needed air, said he couldn't sleep. He took his truck, drove out toward the same grove. His radio pinged once at 11:43 p.m., then nothing. Truck found the next morning, doors open, keys in the ignition. No footprints leading away, just one thing out of place, a strip of ranger uniform cloth snagged 12 feet up in a tree. No sign of a struggle, no blood, no body, just silence. Again. At that point, I requested reassignment, got denied. They said it was just a coincidence, called it fatigue, said Talbot might have been suicidal, but I knew better. Because the night before Talbot vanished, he came to my cabin. Eyes wide, shaking, pale like he hadn't eaten. He said he'd been hearing something. Not in the woods. Under them. A voice, he said. A low hum buried beneath the roots, like it wasn't speaking in words, but in weight. Like the earth itself was trying to say something. That's when I remembered what one of the tribal stewards once told me. back when I first started. He said, "Don't walk into the trees with questions. They remember too much, and some of them don't want to share." I laughed it off back then. I was new, rational. I thought the land was just land. But after what I saw, I stopped laughing. In the weeks that followed, 3 more disappearances. None reported to the public. 2 campers, 1 volunteer biologist, all in that same stretch of forest. Tall trees grove, near the watershed basin, and that's where the elder came in. He wasn't supposed to talk. His family had made an oath, generations back. Silence was the price for survival, but he broke it. He said the land had shifted. Something had moved beneath the old stones, and once it moved, it would keep moving. He told us the park boundary was drawn wrong on purpose, that certain areas were marked not for protection, but for containment. I believed him, because by then, I was already hearing the voice too. And when you hear it, when it starts speaking in the back of your skull, whispering in breath you didn't exhale, there's no one hearing it. That's why I'm telling this story. Not because I want to, but because I have to, and because I think something's coming, something the forest has been feeding, and it's not finished yet. It waits where roots grow sideways, and it only shows itself when the ground forgets the sun. This isn't a legend, it's a record, and records don't lie. Subscribe to MindFuel for what's next. We have the original ranger logs, the taped interviews, the old maps that don't match GPS. And one more thing, the elder's final warning was never written down, but it was recorded. And in Chapter 1, you'll hear it for yourself. After the 3rd body never turned up, when the names were starting to stack higher than the trees, headquarters stopped sending questions, and I started sending them elsewhere. I remembered a man I'd spoken to once, years ago, a tribal elder from the Yurok community. Name was Thomas 3 Feathers. Quiet, sharp-eyed, like someone who listened more than he blinked. We'd only talked once, after a prescribed burn in '99. He'd said, "Fire don't just clear the land, it wakes what sleeps under it." Back then I chalked it up to poetic metaphor, but now I wasn't so sure. So I drove out to Waitchpeck, brought the ranger logs, the incident reports. He wouldn't look at them, just stared at the corner of the table like he was waiting for something to speak first. When he did, it wasn't to me. It was to the land. He murmured a prayer under his breath, a slow rhythm in a language I didn't know. And when he finished, he finally looked up. And he said this, "Thomas, 3 Feathers." We weren't meant to walk under those trees after nightfall. The bones beneath them still whisper. I asked him what he meant by bones. He didn't answer at first, just got up, went to a drawer, pulled out a folded piece of deer hide, unrolled it on the table. It was a hand-drawn map, old, cracked at the corners, looked like it had been carried too far for too long. He pointed to a section that didn't have a name, just symbols burned into the hide. A handprint. Upside down, 3 marks slashing through it. He told me those were forbidden grounds, not because of sacred rites, but because something older had claimed them. The tribe had once forbidden entry to those groves entirely. Not during hunting, not during ceremony, not ever. But the bans were never passed down through the state. They never made it to the federal surveyors. And over time, that stretch of forbidden land had been paved into access points. Some of it, he said, was now part of the park's most popular hiking trails. He said the trees didn't grow right in that zone. They grew tall, yes, but not straight. Their rings were misshapen, bark too thick, sap too dark, and the roots didn't follow gravity. They curled toward something that pulled. I asked him why no one had said anything. Why let hikers, kids, families walk into something the tribe had stayed away from for centuries? His answer came slow, final, like a door closing without a sound. Thomas 3, feathers. We tried warning them. Your people built signs over the warnings. Your maps buried ours. He said there was a word in their tongue, one he wouldn't repeat aloud, but it translated roughly to that which hunts backward. Not a spirit, not an animal, something else. It didn't track prey by scent or sound. It moved through memory, through ground. It waited for return visits, marked people like trees. And once it had your name, it didn't need your body right away. The forest would keep you first. Let the fear set in. Let the weight do the work. He said he'd only seen the result once, when he was a child. A man from the village had broken the rule, wandered into the edge of the banished grove after sunset. He came back the next morning with his mouth full of soil and his eyes turned completely white. Couldn't speak, couldn't blink. He just kept pointing into the woods like something was still watching. 3 days later, he disappeared without a trace. Just like Morse, just like Talbot, just like all the others. I asked why he'd finally told me all this. Why now? And he said, Thomas 3 feathers, because it's waking up again, and because you already stepped where it remembers. That night, I dreamed in static. The dream had no light, no edges, only breathing, and something moving just beneath the sound, pacing, counting. When I woke up, I couldn't move for 7 minutes. My arms were pinned like bark had grown through my ribs. There were marks on my floorboards, long, curved, like claw impressions, or roots. I never went back to that part of the park again, but the dream still follows me, and the map he showed me. I took a photo of it before I left. When I compared it to the official topographical charts, the symbols lined up with a series of disappearances going back to the 1940s. No headlines, just missing persons, one every 3 to 5 years. Until now. Now, it's happening every season. And in Chapter 2, we'll show you the list they never published, the names the Park Service buried, and the man who tried to warn them before he vanished too. Before the files were redacted, before the reports were sealed or rewritten entirely, there was one case that made the rounds inside the ranger cabins. Not because it was official, but because nobody could agree on what actually came back. His name was Ethan Vale, transferred from Olympic National Park, clean record, former military, the kind of guy who double-knotted his boots and believed every problem had a logical solution. He was assigned to the Redwood perimeter team in early spring, right when the fog starts settling deeper into the tree line. Ethan wasn't one to chase legends. He scoffed at the disappearances, called it park myth inflation, said every wilderness job came with its own batch of ghost stories, and that this place just liked to scare rookies. So when he decided to begin mapping unmapped groves on his own, no one thought twice. He said he wanted to fill in the gaps, help get the old growth areas digitized, make a real contribution. He brought his personal GPS rig, top-grade military surplus, brought paper backups, elevation overlays, a compass, 3 days of food, and his dog, a Belgian Malinois named Jasper, trained, sharp, always at his side. The plan was simple. Camp overnight in the northeastern grove near Lost Man Creek, trace 2 loops, get back by the 3rd morning. But he came back in 1, no data, no maps, and no dog. He walked into the ranger station near dawn. His face was sunburned, eyes bloodshot, no visible injuries, no scratches, no broken gear, but he was drenched. Boots soaked through. The odd part? It hadn't rained in 3 days. When asked what happened, he just said the trail shifted. That's all. No elaboration. No apology for triggering the emergency call. Just those 3 words. The trail shifted, and he refused to speak about the dog. Never put up signs. Never searched. Just hung Jasper's leash on a nail outside his cabin door. Let it stay there. At first, The others figured something had rattled him. Maybe a cougar encounter, maybe disorientation. It happens. You don't sleep, you lose your bearings, you come back shaken. It passes. But with Ethan, it didn't. First came the silences. He stopped eating with the others, started wandering off during shifts, not far, just out of sight, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for hours. Then came the drawings, found in the margins of his notebooks, symbols, rough, scratched in, circles with eyes inside them, root-like patterns spiraling inward, and always one shape in the center, an upside-down handprint. When asked, he said he didn't remember drawing them, and didn't seem bothered that they were there. But the worst thing, the thing that started to ripple through the rest of the crew, was the shadow. People started to notice it during briefing shifts. At first, it seemed like nothing, just a flicker, a trick of the lighting. But then more than one ranger noticed. When Ethan moved, his shadow didn't always follow. Sometimes it lagged. Other times, it moved slightly ahead. And once, recorded on a grainy break room camera, his silhouette turned left, while his body turned right. He never mentioned it, acted like nothing was wrong. But we started getting complaints. Rangers were requesting reassignment, refusing to work the east perimeter if Ethan was posted there. One of them, Delaney, swore she heard something whispering near his bunk at night. A voice, breathing her name. But when she sat up, he was still asleep, and the voice kept speaking for 3 more minutes, directly into her ear. She quit that week. Then the equipment failures began. GPS rigs stopped recording near his assigned zones. Batteries drained within minutes. Trail cams went missing. One camera came back. We only found one clip saved, just 7 seconds. It showed a clearing, wide, empty, trees still, no sound, and then just barely visible. A human figure standing between 2 redwoods. But the scale was wrong. It was too tall, too still, and it was wearing Ethan's exact uniform. But when we enhanced the clip, it didn't have a face, just bark, like it had grown from the tree itself. We showed Ethan the footage. He didn't blink, didn't even ask to see it again. Just stood up, walked to the window, and said, "I think something followed me back." He was removed from field rotation, placed on desk duty. Then, 2 weeks later, he vanished, left the station. No warning, no packed bags. Truck still parked outside, keys in the ignition. His cabin was empty except for 2 things. Jasper's leash still hanging on the wall. And a trail map of Redwood Grove. One new mark scratched into it, in a place that doesn't exist on any current survey. A mark shaped like a downward pointing eye. The next morning, a ranger from the Southern Watch reported something new. A pattern found in the soil, 30 feet wide. A spiral, pressed deep, as if something massive had risen and gone walking. The roots near the spiral were blackened, dry, like they'd been drained. We never found Ethan. We stopped searching after 5 days, because by then, too many of us had started hearing it. The same thing Ethan must have heard out there, a hum beneath the soil, growing louder, more frequent. And in Chapter 2, you'll hear from the technician who tried to record it, and what happened when she played it back. Because once you hear it, it doesn't stay in the tape. It stays in you. It started with a trail that wasn't on the map. That's how Ranger Ethan Vale described it when he finally spoke, 29 days after returning from the Grove. Before that, all we had were fragments, a missing dog, a busted GPS, a man who'd been trained to survive the worst of the wild, now waking up screaming in a cabin 2 miles from the nearest tree. He'd gone in prepared. We all read his itinerary, grid scans, backup flares, weather-protected maps. He was building a new overlay of the park's east groves, dense, old-growth zones that hadn't been updated since the 70s. Some spots still didn't have names, just elevation codes. It was supposed to be a routine 3-day recon, but he came back in one, and he didn't bring the dog back with him. Now Jasper wasn't just a companion. He was certified for avalanche recovery, wilderness tracking, even post-fire trauma searches, and Ethan didn't just leave animals behind. We all knew that. Something had gone wrong. But he refused to give a statement, didn't fill out the re-entry logs, just walked past the front desk, eyes unfocused, boots still muddy, and went straight to his bunk. When we asked what happened, he looked like he was still listening to something far away. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "The trail turned when I didn't." We laughed it off at first, a ranger joke, field fatigue. But then came the silence. He stopped joining briefings, didn't radio in his locations, started patrolling sectors that weren't assigned to him, sometimes at night, sometimes barefoot. One morning, I found him standing in the middle of the woods, no pack, no jacket, staring into a knot in the side of a redwood, just staring. When I called out to him, he flinched like I'd woken him from a coma. He said, "It's not a knot, it's an eye." We thought maybe it was PTSD or exposure. We offered help. He refused it. But the longer he stayed, the more things started shifting around him. Literal things. Lights in his cabin flickered even when the grid was stable. His trail cams stopped capturing anything past 10 p.m., as if the forest beyond a certain time just stopped being there. And then came the shadow. Ranger Ortega was the first to say it out loud. She said she was pouring coffee during night watch, looked through the window, and saw Ethan walking by. Except he wasn't walking. His legs were still, his feet never left the ground, but he was moving, drifting, and the shadow following him, it wasn't his, it was ahead of him. We checked the footage. Sure enough, his shadow peeled forward, stretching around a corner before he turned it. It bent wrong, moved faster than he did, and when he stopped, it kept going. We tried to confront him, but his eyes, they weren't the same color anymore. Not entirely. There was something off in the sclera, something faint and shifting, like tree rings underwater. We called in the regional coordinator. They put Ethan on immediate leave, mandated a psych eval, but he never showed up for the appointment. And 3 nights later, he was gone. Cabin unlocked, uniform still hung on the chair, Jasper's leash still nailed to the wall. The only thing out of place was his trail map. He'd been marking a route no one had cleared, a loop between groves that shouldn't connect, except somehow they did. He'd drawn it in red ink, labeled it the old path. 1 week later, hikers reported seeing someone deep in the woods, past Boundary Ridge. He matched Ethan's build, same park-issued jacket, same posture, but they said he didn't move like a person. He moved like he'd forgotten what a body was for. One woman said he was standing in front of a fallen log, facing it, unmoving. She tried to speak, but before she could, he turned his head slightly. Only the head. No shoulder movement, no shift in weight. Then he walked backward, directly into the tree line, without turning around or eyeing. They followed the path to where he'd been, found a footprint, bare, too large to be his, pressed into the dirt beside something else. A paw print, fresh, still warm. But Jasper never came back. And neither did Ethan. We filed the report. They closed the case. But here's what they didn't close. The loop Ethan drew has since appeared on 3 separate ranger maps. No one knows who adds them. They just show up. And every time someone walks near the old path, their compasses jitter. Their phones shut down. And in the distance, someone whistles, low, broken, like a breath caught in a throat. It's always the same melody. We've recorded it 4 times, and every time we play it back, something goes wrong. Equipment shorts out, screens glitch, and the dogs bark for hours afterward. We'll share that audio in Chapter 2, but only if you're ready, because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. And this story, it's just beginning. This is MindFuel, where the truth doesn't just get told, it gets remembered. So if you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because in the next chapter, we don't just follow the trail, we hear what's at the end of it. 3 months after Ethan Vale vanished, another name joined the park's unspoken list. He wasn't a ranger, he wasn't even a local, just a backpacker. Ryan Mathers, age 28, freelance wilderness photographer, no criminal record, no history of delusions, just a digital trail of mountain summits, trail guides, and forest sunrises. He'd hiked all over the West Coast, but something drew him to the Redwoods. According to his first post on a small hiking forum, he'd read about the Old Path, a supposed hidden trail connecting isolated groves that weren't officially listed. Said he wanted to find it. Said he was curious why the maps never matched the terrain. He wasn't the first person to notice that, but he was the first to go public with what he found. The footage he uploaded was simple. A short clip, just over a minute. No commentary. Just Ryan's breathing, the wind, the slow rustle of leaves overhead. He pans over the undergrowth, then stops. Zooms in. There, half buried beneath moss and root, is something unnatural. A structure. Wooden, weather-worn, a totem. Hand-carved from a single blackened log. Maybe 4 feet tall, wedged deep into the ground. At first it looks like just another fallen tree, but then the details emerge. Elongated heads, 6 of them, all stretched impossibly tall, mouths opened unnaturally wide. Not in song, not in laughter, but frozen mid-scream. The kind of scream you don't make with sound, but with silence so sharp it scars the air. Each face has no eyes, only deep sockets, smooth and hollow, as if whatever carved them believed vision was unnecessary. Below the faces, hand marks, layered, too many for one person to have made. Pressed into the wood like something had gripped it tightly, again and again. Ryan touches the surface, pauses, then the camera glitches. Once, then again. The screen flickers, audio distorts. In the final frame, just before it cuts, you can hear something. Not breathing, not footsteps, just wood creaking, like a tree under strain. He uploaded the video at 9:14 p.m. It hit a few niche cryptid forums by morning. Some called it fake. Others said the location looked familiar, maybe near Lost Man Creek. A few argued the totem resembled warning markers from old tribal boundaries, used to mark forbidden zones. But the last comment Ryan ever posted was 3 nights later. It was 3:27 a.m., a single sentence typed beneath his own upload. They found me again. No punctuation, no follow-up. And after that, nothing. His social feeds went dark. No more location pings, no recent charges on his credit card. His Jeep was found parked at a rest stop 30 miles from the Grove. Engine cold, keys on the dash, driver's door still open. There were no footprints, but there was something else. Rangers found the totem again. Only this time, it wasn't buried. It was standing upright, at the edge of the same overlook where Ethan Vale had last been seen. Still carved, still silent. But there was something new, a 7th face, one that hadn't been there in Ryan's footage. Smaller, hair shorter, the cheekbones more modern, less stylized. The mouth, though, was the same, wide open, mid-scream, and beneath it, freshly carved into the base, RM. For the record, the totem was removed. Or at least, it was supposed to be, loaded into a flatbed and taken to a ranger facility for analysis. It never arrived. Somewhere between the Grove and the depot, less than 8 miles of clear road, the truck vanished. Comms failed. dashcam corrupted, and the driver, Ranger Holloway, has no memory of the trip, only remembers seeing a shadow in the middle of the road. He says it wasn't human, but it was watching. He hasn't spoken since. The totem? Still missing, but its imprint remained, a perfect circle in the dirt. And this time, 8 faces. Nobody's talking, but someone's still carving. And the strangest part? Satellite images from 3 weeks later show a second totem, farther north, near a grove long abandoned after a landslide, too remote for tourists, too unstable for trail crews. But it's there, clear as day, leaning forward like it's listening. We'll show that image in Chapter 3, because there's more. Someone followed the satellite trail, and what they found wasn't just another carving, it was a pattern, etched into the forest itself. The totems are not markers, they're invitations. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to MindFuel, not for entertainment, but because this is unfolding, and something very old has started counting again. Not time, not people, but faces. The tallest trees on Earth don't just block the sky, they protect what's beneath from being seen. And maybe that's why nothing ever wanted to fly above them, until now. In 2023, a research group from UC Davis secured a temporary flight exemption from the National Park Service. Their goal was ecological, canopy analysis, studying carbon density, fungal interconnectivity, airborne microspores. It was a collaboration between biology, environmental science, and machine learning. 6 drones. Autonomous pattern tracking. All launched before dawn to avoid wind shift and glare. The first 4 drones followed standard flight arcs. No anomalies, just layers of green, sprawling, ancient, almost too thick to measure. Some of these trees hadn't been cataloged, some hadn't even been seen. But the 5th drone, unit number 5B, broke pattern. Not by malfunction, it reacted to movement. At 14 minutes and 19 seconds into its flight log, the drone pivots midair. A reaction protocol only triggered when a thermal anomaly exceeds threshold by 200%. The drone's sensor spikes. Altitude, 340 feet. It hovers, refocuses, then shifts to follow. The footage was never meant for public release. It was reviewed by 2 teams, then flagged for internal investigation. But someone, no one knows who, leaked the uncut clip to an encrypted server that environmentalists sometimes use for whistleblowing. And in that 41-second video, frame by frame, something moved. Not below, not within the trees, but above them. The drone tracks it through branches. There's no sound, no growl, no roar, just leaves shivering under pressure. Then, between the canopy, a flash. First, shadow, then displacement. Something bends light just enough for the camera to catch an outline. Not a bird, not an ape, not a drone, an arm, long, human-shaped, but elongated beyond proportion, at least 6 feet from shoulder to fingertip. Muscle striations visible even through the leaves. The hand, if you can call it that, had too many joints. They moved like they didn't understand gravity, and it was reaching. Across a 40-foot gap between 2 redwoods, not jumping, not climbing, just moving through the air, as if the rules didn't apply up there, as if there was no weight, or no permission needed. It doesn't land, it doesn't fall, it just slips into the next canopy, and the branches bend, not like they're breaking, but like they know the shape that's passing through them. The drone pauses, follows, but 19 seconds later the screen flickers. Once. Then the GPS fails, altitude drops, visual signal corrupts, final telemetry shows a slow descent, then a sudden stop, not a crash, a freeze. The drone was found 6 days later, On the ground, undamaged, battery depleted, camera lens clean. But the memory drive? Fused, as if it had been exposed to heat from the inside. The footage we have was pulled from the backup cache, uploaded automatically to a cloud mirror. The researchers didn't even know it had been stored. But here's where it gets worse. Drone number 6 never returned. Its last ping was just beyond the eastern ridge, a zone not open to the public, a place with no trails, no ranger stations, and no rescue history, because no one ever goes there. The telemetry from drone number 6 ends mid-acceleration, straight down, as if pulled. No wreckage, no flight debris, no birds of prey in the region large enough to explain it. And yet, 2 days later, hikers on a different trail claimed they heard something fall through the canopy. But they didn't see a drone. They saw a tree, split from the top down, as if something had gone through it, without stopping. That tree is still there. Local guides call it the hollow scream. If you knock once, it knocks back, but only when you're alone. The UC Davis team filed a closed report. Funding was paused, permits withdrawn. The park quietly limited future drone activity. They cited airspace safety. But those of us watching, we know better. Something lives up there, not in the trees, above them. And it's not hiding anymore. It's hunting. We'll be showing the actual frame-by-frame breakdown in the next chapter, not to frighten you, but to prove that what we've seen is real. If you haven't subscribed to MindFuel, do it now. We don't tell campfire stories. We archive the unexplained, because the forest isn't still. It's waiting, and it's watching who dares to look from above. For a long time, he wouldn't talk. Not to reporters, not to park officials, not even to his own family. His name is Thomas Pui, age 83, one of the last full-blooded Yurok speakers still living in the ancestral stretch near Auric. He lives in a one-room cabin without electricity. His front porch faces the tree line. He says he built it that way, so he'd always know if it came back. The tribal council tried to stop him from speaking to us, but in February of last year, he sent a letter, hand-written. No return address. Just 4 words on the front. You filmed its shadow. He asked for no cameras, only audio, only voice. And when he sat across from our producer, he didn't waste time. No welcome, no introduction. He just began. We used to leave offerings. Now, white men hike with GoPros and disrespect. It's waking up. His hands didn't shake. His breath never caught. He spoke like someone unburdening something older than guilt. He said the creature isn't new. It's not a cryptid, not folklore. It has a name, but not one he would say aloud. Only whispered syllables, shaped in the back of the throat. Sounds meant to bend away from firelight. But it was real. Always had been. His grandfather told him, there's a reason the trees grow so tall, a reason the roots run so deep. They were planted that way, to hold something down, not bury it, not kill it, just trap it. He pointed to a map, laid out beneath a hide-wrapped drum, used an old bone-handled blade to trace a circle around a section of grove most hikers now call Titan's Watch. That's not what the elders called it. They called it the mouth. He told us, once every few generations, the seal weakens, not fully, but enough for it to move, to watch, to test the edges. When that happened, his people knew what to do. They sang. They burned herbs that only grow in the valley basin. And most importantly, they left blood offerings, not human, usually deer, sometimes birds. But the principle was the same. Feed it something that fears you, or it will feed on something that doesn't. He says the last offering was made in 1912. After that, they were told to stop. By government surveyors, by forest contractors, by men with paper and wires and laws. They laughed at the songs, scoffed at the markings carved in the tree bark, painted over them, called it graffiti, called it superstition. And then the loggers came. Not to Titan's watch directly, but close. Too close. In 1993, an old-growth cluster just east of the grove was illegally felled. It was never reported publicly, but Thomas remembers the sound. Not the chainsaws, not the crash, the silence after. A silence, he said, stretched too long, one that pressed on your chest like you were the one buried. That's when things changed. The weather stopped following patterns. Certain animals, rabbits, woodpeckers, bobcats, stopped nesting near the watch. A pair of tribal fishermen vanished without a trace. Their nets were found in the river, still tied, but their canoe, crushed, split down the middle like it had hit a wall, midstream. He says the creature below the roots doesn't live in a den. It doesn't stalk like a mountain lion. It doesn't echo like an owl. It waits, because waiting is all it has ever known. It doesn't kill for territory. It kills for reminder. It was bound to silence, but we made noise. Thomas leaned forward at the end of the recording. His eyes didn't blink. His hands gripped his knees. And in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "The trees lean in when it walks. You can't hear it, but they can." He stood, pulled a leather satchel from beneath his cot, and handed us something wrapped in wool. It was a small wooden idol, carved from the same blackened timber seen in Ryan Mather's footage. Only this one wasn't screaming. It was smiling, and carved beneath the mouth, in Yurok script, was one phrase: "Seal broken, song forgotten." Thomas refused to say more. He walked us to the trail's edge and pointed toward the tree line. He said we should never return during a red moon, because that's when it climbs higher than the trees. That's when it looks back. We asked why now? Why speak after all this time? His answer: because I see what it's doing to your shadows. The audio ends there, but we've played it countless times, and always, at the same second the tape cuts, there's something else underneath his voice. Faint, low, like a breath in reverse, or something exhaling from underground. And each time we try to isolate it, the waveform shifts, like it doesn't want to be seen until it knows your name. If you're still watching, subscribe to MindFuel, not for horror, but because what happens next, no one's going to believe unless it's documented. In the next chapter, we examine the frequencies recorded beneath Titan's watch, sounds no animal makes, patterns no biologist can replicate, and the technician who tried to erase them, and what followed her home. In June of 2022, 3 hikers left Arcata at dawn. They were friends, local, familiar with the terrain, all under 30, all experienced with backcountry conditions. Their plan was simple: follow the Berry Glen Trail, turn toward Ladybird Johnson Grove, camp overnight. Their permits were valid, their packs were loaded. They checked in at the kiosk, and their phones synced GPS pings at 7:42 a.m. Everything, on paper, was routine. At 1:12 p.m., one of the hikers uploaded a short clip to Instagram. It shows them laughing near a large redwood with a burn scar. The caption reads, "Feels like we're being watched." There would be no more uploads, no more pings, but their movement didn't stop. The group's satellite tracker, rented from a local outfitter, continued transmitting for another 6 hours. Each coordinate logged their direction, and yet something was off. At 3:51 p.m., the tracker showed the group circling one. Not once, not twice, but 6 times, each loop tighter than the last. A spiral, not on the map, not on any topographic survey. Then they stopped moving. Not like they camped, more like they were lifted. Because the final logged coordinates are 14 feet above the forest floor, and then nothing. At 6:08 p.m., the transmission ends. A rescue operation launched 24 hours later. Teams of rangers, volunteers, K-9 units, they scoured every path, every ridge. No footprints, no torn clothing, no broken branches, no blood. But on the third day, at the edge of an unofficial trailhead called Crooked Timber Bend, a ranger flagged something unnatural. A boot. Standard hiking grade, laces perfectly tied. But inside, moss. Packed deep, not grown, placed. Botanists later confirmed the moss came from a glade nearly 2 miles away, and it had been alive, still damp, when inserted. The hiker's foot? Gone. No sign of trauma, no bite marks, just absence. Then something stranger happened. When rangers tried to retrace the group's path, the trail itself changed. Landmarks that had been documented, logs, stone stacks, forked trees, were either misplaced or no longer present. And when they reviewed the GoPro footage retrieved from the tracker's SD card, the last minute of video loops the same 3 frames. Over and over. Not darkness, not static. Just trees, a cluster, unmoving, too still. But when played on a monitor with a frame sync analyzer, something else appears. Every 7 seconds, less than a blink, one of the trees shifts. Not sways, not creaks. Shifts. Its position, its height, its bark. As if the tree itself is trying to be remembered differently. Experts claimed it was compression artifact. But when that same footage was run through analog tape, no compression present. The shift still happened, exactly on time, every 7 seconds. What kind of forest moves its own paths? What kind of root system edits memory? We followed up with the ranger who flagged the moss-filled boot. She declined a formal interview but did leave us with a warning. If you turn around on the trail and what's behind you doesn't look like where you came from, don't try to go back. Just sit down, close your eyes, let it pass. When we asked what it was, she said nothing, just touched her radio and walked away. Since that search, Crooked Timber Bend has been quietly fenced off, not closed, not removed from the maps, just marked with temporary access restrictions. But hikers still find their way in, and the disappearances haven't stopped. In the last 5 years, at least 9 hikers have vanished near undocumented groves, all logged as lost, all declared inconclusive, none ever found. The forest is not losing people, it's choosing who doesn't get to leave. And in Chapter 6, we review the audio from one of the few hikers who made it back. His voice memo, recorded just before his radio went dead, mentions whistling trees and something walking upside down above the canopy. Subscribe to MindFuel. Because the deeper this goes, the more we're convinced. Redwood wasn't made for us, and something in it is growing bold enough to change the map. He came to the forest for silence. Martin Kustler, acoustic ecologist, former field technician for Cornell's Center for Bioacoustics, spent 8 years recording birdsong in migratory corridors, tuned to decibels humans don't notice, conditioned to hear patterns that others ignore. But he never expected what he captured in Redwood. He'd been contracted to document changes in forest soundscapes, part of a climate monitoring initiative. Baseline data, nothing unusual, just ambient noise, wind, insects, canopy sway. He chose a site just outside the restricted edge of Titan's Watch, an area said to have unusually quiet acoustics. He found the quiet, but underneath it, something else was waiting. He set up an array of 3 contact microphones, low gain, no filters, directly mounted to trees. For 12 hours he recorded without incident. But that night, while reviewing the files, something caught him, a low vibration, deep, rhythmic, like a hum made of breath. Not mechanical, not natural. It didn't pulse like wind, it spoke in intervals. So he slowed it down, 1/4 speed, then half again. What emerged wasn't just vibration. It was structure, a cadence, repeating, layered, and, within that cadence, syllables. He sent the waveform to a linguist at UC Berkeley, an expert in dead indigenous dialects. She responded with one line. You're playing back 4 languages that haven't been spoken aloud in over 200 years. Among them, Yurok, Toloa, Wiyut, and an unidentified dialect she called Klamath Split Tongue. A form only known through fragmented ceremonial scripts, never recorded, never deciphered. But somehow, the sound, embedded in the tree's vibration, was mouthing these tongues. Not spoken like a human voice, more like breath trapped in grain, something alive in the wood, wanting out. Martin returned the next morning. He brought higher fidelity equipment, attached a parabolic mic to the base of a sequoia sempervirens believed to be over 1,800 years old. And that's when the recording spiked. The moment his microphone made contact with the trunk, the hum intensified, then split. Not louder, deeper. The waveform jumped off the chart, a pressure he hadn't felt before, not through the ears, but through the chest. Then his nose began to bleed. No pain, no warning, just a thin stream that dripped onto his recorder. He said it felt like the tree was exhaling through him. And the sound didn't just vibrate through wood anymore. It began to echo in the dirt beneath his feet. Like there was something down there, listening back. He tore the equipment off the trunk and left the forest immediately. But when he reviewed the backup footage, the one mounted on his shoulder harness, the screen had gone dark 5 minutes before the nosebleed. Not black, not dead, dark, like something had stepped between the camera and the light. Martin tried to scrub the audio files. He deleted them, erased the drives. But days later, his car radio, while off, began playing the hum. Not a broadcast, not static, just the same sound looping, faint, almost thoughtful, as if reminding him it wasn't gone, just quieter. Until next time. He moved out of California 2 months later, changed his number, deactivated all accounts. But before he vanished, he mailed us a hard drive, unlabeled, no note, just a file titled, "Don't Let Them Slow It Down Again." We played it once, in a soundproof studio, using analog monitors, and at the 2-minute 48-second mark, the room shook. Not from bass, not from malfunction, from something beneath us. The building's foundation vibrated with a frequency later identified as subharmonic resonance. A frequency not present in the original file. Something added itself. If the redwoods are speaking, they are not speaking for us. And what they're echoing may not be memory, it may be instructions. In the next chapter, we follow the only park employee who tried to mark the humming trees with reflectors. 3 days later, he came back. His mouth was filled with dirt, and he couldn't remember planting anything. Subscribe to MindFuel. We are documenting what the others refuse to archive, not because it's safe, but because someone has to listen before it learns to speak louder. In March of 2023, Dr. Eliza Marin was conducting a tree stress study deep within the Lost Man Creek Basin. She was part of a broader biological assessment meant to track environmental strain on old-growth redwoods, factors like drought, wildfire, recovery, and soil depletion. But she began to notice something else. Not disease, not decay, but movement. Trees do move, over years, even decades. They lean toward light, shift to compete for sun. But these movements weren't seasonal. They weren't gradual, and they weren't following the sun. They were following blood. It began with something she thought was coincidence. A fellow field technician, Jared, cut his palm while unpacking sample equipment near Grove number 16. He bandaged it. Didn't think much of it. But the next morning, one of the tagged redwoods, R4829, had pivoted 7 inches east, toward the exact rock where he'd sat to apply pressure. Now, redwoods can shift. Wind, gravity, shifting soil, but not overnight. And not like this. Marin documented the phenomenon. She placed sterile blood samples from livestock on control points around 6 different trees, then set up time-lapse cameras. In 2 of the 6, the roots re-angled. The bark above the samples bulged, as if drawing in scent, heat, memory. The wood pulsed, breathless, but alive. Not random growth, directed attention. She never published the data. That same week, a ranger named Paul Delaney reported an unrelated injury, or so it seemed. He'd slipped while inspecting an erosion line along the high bluff trailhead, hit his shoulder, broke skin, bled. He camped that night near a dense patch of unnamed grove. Standard procedure for an overnight boundary check. Nothing abnormal until morning. Because in daylight, a redwood that had been 3 meters away from his tent was now only 1. It had no reason to lean. The slope favored the opposite direction. There'd been no wind, no rainfall, no roots exposed. Delaney dismissed it as an illusion until he reviewed the footage from his wildlife camera. At 2:14 a.m., the tree was where it had always been. By 3:51 a.m., it was closer. By 4:03, it moved. Not with the sway of branches, not in reaction to elements. It leaned, toward the place where he bled. But that's not what shook him. What shook him was the bark. The grain on the lower trunk, visible in infrared, was contracting. Not expanding like normal thermal fluctuation, contracting inward toward the blood-stained earth, drawing breath from where it had soaked the soil. It did not drink. It listened. And then, it responded. We later interviewed Delaney off the record. He didn't want his name attached, but gave us permission to quote him. He said, "You ever see a dog sniff a shirt to remember who it belongs to? That's what it felt like. The tree wasn't hungry. It was curious, like it finally had your scent." After that night, he never camped alone again. What the redwoods lean toward isn't warmth, isn't light, isn't even sound. It's wounds. Wounds they didn't make, but seem eager to find. Dr. Marin has since resigned from her study, but she sent us her field notes. There's a single page, in handwriting, more frantic than the others. It reads, "They don't follow the sun, they follow the hurt." And beneath it, scrawled sideways, "I think the forest can smell regret." In the next chapter, we listen to one final recovered voice. A backpacker's body was never found, but the voicemail he left his brother should never have gone through. It contains 37 seconds of wind and a second voice beneath his own. Subscribe to MindFuel. What we're uncovering isn't myth, it's mechanism. And the forest may no longer be waiting, it may be watching for who bleeds next. So now we know, they bleed where we bleed, they move when we're wounded. And the trees, those towering sentinels of time, have started to breathe again. Not with wind, but with memory. The ranger's tent, the blood-soaked root, the bark that flexed where no hand touched it. We thought it was an ecosystem, but maybe it's something else. A structure, a body, or a mouth preparing to open. And that's where Volume 1 must rest, because what comes next breaks the rules of reality. Even the rules of the forest. Up until now, the threat has been hidden beneath the canopy. But in Volume 2, it enters the mind, the hallucinations, the reflection that walks the wrong way, the sound in the trees that speaks in languages no one alive remembers. Tachokna doesn't just hunt, it learns. And it's learning us. We're not stopping. Because what happens next isn't just folklore, it's documentation. We have the footage, we've seen the tapes. And once you do, you'll never walk past a tree the same way again. Subscribe to MindFuel now, because Volume 2 begins with what no search team ever came back from. Next, the mind games start, and it only gets darker from here.